We have a Gransfors Bruk small force axe here, the axe of the bushcraft community. Man, this is like a key to the community. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but we have some leather work to do. Oregon Mike, you might have seen him around YouTube or Facebook, contacted me to get a leather Overstrike collar made for his small forest axe. Now I live up here in Newfoundland, Canada. Mike lives down in the States. If you know anything about shipping, shipping an axe of this size, it's not a big axe, but shipping a box this size with the weight of an axe all the way up and back down, you're probably looking at $50 each way, just based on my experience of shipping so far. So right at the time Mike inquired about getting this done for his axe, I saw this one on Canadian Bushcraft Trading Outposts, great site if you're in Canada, and I scored this little forest axe. I have no real interest in the small forest axe. I've kind of intentionally avoided it for several years, but I got it, so now I have the pattern for doing sheaths or collars for anyone else's axe, and of course is a beautiful axe to add to my collection. Now an Overstrike collar is a great thing to have. The idea behind it is that if you happen to swing and you overswing, or you're splitting and you overswing and your handle brings up in your wood, this is your contact point. This is what's getting all the pressure handle, and you see a lot of old axe handles. I've restored so many and replaced the handles on that have been hollowed right out here. Almost unbelievable that the axe is still holding on like it, but yeah, I've seen some crazy ones just chipped right away over time overstriking. So you put a leather wrap collar on here. We're probably going to do it. This axe has a bit of a beard, so if you do overstrike, probably going to be down here somewhere. So we'll probably do it maybe that long, 6 inches long or so, and that will protect Mike's axe from overstriking. These axes are actually a pain in the butt to do because you have this big undercut here that makes them a lot more difficult. You can't just, if it was a straight bottom of a head, you could easily just do a quick wrap. But it's not quite the case. There's a lot of contouring here you have to cut around. So an Overstrike collar will wrap around from the front and then tie together at the back here. So what I'll do is I'll take a piece of paper, wrap around like this, and then I'll roughly press out the contour line there. Just give it a little bit of a pencil etch so I don't lose my line. So there's our fit, and now if we keep that in place we can come around to the other side, and as long as that other side is in place you can do this side. I'll note that this is a super rough step of the process, so everything's cut out quite roughly here because you have super thin material here you're doing your template with, and then once you get that leather it's much thicker, so the size changes a little bit, and also the paper doesn't move and stretch like leather will. So we'll draw this out, give it a shot, and then of course leather's a beautiful material. You can always stretch, pull, it's malleable, so we might need to trim it a little bit, but we'll make sure we try to leave a bit of excess material. Now in order to try this out and see if it fits on my axe and make any adjustments, I have to be able to get this closed together. So what I'm going to do is punch my first 2 grommet holes up here in the top corner. That way we can tie it up around the head here and see how everything is going to fit. My standard leather punch here. So here's where we're at now, 2 eyelets. And I'll just lap this around the head here, and then I'll just got some scrap 550 here. Just for mock-up. I'll put something nicer in there. by the end, but I'll run some 550 in there just because it's somewhat disposable. Now we can draw it tight and see what we have here. Just because if it's off by much, it'll be very unpleasing to the eye. So I'll go maybe. Now we don't want to come too close to the edge with these. We want to leave some leather there for some strength. Made that mistake before, and the first time I tied it up and I put a little bit of tension on it, I just pulled the tightening string right through the edge of the leather. I had to start all over again. Okay, before I waste any more materials or go any further, I'm just going to put this on the axe and just give it a trial fit. I like to use leather lace because it has a lot of traction, and I'll wax the leather lace before I put it on for the final time, just so it doesn't go anywhere. Now, just trying to even out the amount of lace here on each side. Okay, so this is a loose test fit after the first time trying it on, and I'd say that's a success. It looks good up around here. You can see it's a pretty tough thing to do, and looks good down here. I love that webbing like that. Everything's consistent. The right one goes over the left one each time, or whatever pattern. Just be consistent and be tidy so that you end up with a nice consistent look. This looks great. Now what Mike doesn't know is that we're also making him a new custom sheath. We can't have that one colored collar and a different colored head. That would be terrible. We got to have the carpet matching the drapes. So this type where we have this type of head like this, where we have a straight edge or pretty straight edge on top and then a big angled beard like this, lends itself really well to a fold over sheath, not as much a strap. So the axe slips down into the sheath, not in, because then if you have this C pocket for it to go in, like the stock sheath, then you have this big pocket of space here, right here. So we're going to do it very deep so it holds up really well. So something like this, and then this flap will fold down over the top with a nice snap. So I'll trace out my bit here, and then I'll cut it one welt bigger, roughly. So just like so. And I can just cut up through there randomly, and I'll fix that later. Okay, so this will sit just like that, and then this will be a fold down flap. We'll do some nice design or something on there. So now we need this face of the sheath. So I mentioned earlier my intentional avoidance of this axe in the past, and that's for one main reason. It's not anything to do with the axe. I love the small force axe. It's a gorgeous axe, but I'm not sure when it happened. Perhaps it was Wrangler Star had something to do with it, but it's like the Gransfors small forest axe became the entry ticket to the bushcraft community, and it's that elitist attitude that I've kind of been against for always. I just hate that mentality that there's something needed to be part of the club, and in my opinion that's kind of the way the small force axe has been painted. It's just this icon, and if you decide to go with the Wetterlings or the Council Tool, for example, you're just not quite bushcraft enough for the group. You might not be allowed to the meetups, or just that mentality, and that is pretty prevalent. Pretty prevalent, I've found, in the bushcraft community. A lot of people have a very elitist attitude. There's so much opinion going around, and just one second here. There's so much opinion going around, and people are just bashing each other and you don't have the right piece of kit and you don't have the right axe and, well, you don't have a good enough knife, so you're not really part of the community. I see that stuff all the time. It just annoys me. I don't like that mentality. Bushcraft is one of those things where you barely need anything to do it. If you've got an old makeshift knife, it's enough to get you started. You got a little Laplander saw, fantastic. For 15, 20 bucks, 30 bucks, you can be in and bushcraft all day long. And just rely on your knowledge and your skills. So that's one of those things why I've stayed away from the small force axe. I got nothing against the axe. It's completely fine. I'm sure I'll use this once in a while now. I'm glad to have it in my collection, but that's just the reason that I've avoided it to this point. Moving right along, I just did a little rough sketch of a shape I'd like that outside flap to be, so I'm going to cut that out now. It doesn't really have any requirements. Technically, you could do a little 1-inch wide strap. You could cut this in like this in a 1-inch wide strap as long as you have something to wrap over the top of the axe. So you could cut this in whatever shape. I've seen people cut all kinds of wonky shapes in them just to be cool, I guess, or to meet their idea of what they thought would be nice. And now we have a groove that our stitching sits down in. You want to do that so your stitching doesn't sit on the surface of your leather. It's not exposed to catch on things. It sits down beneath the surface. Progress so far, so we have our stitch groove, and I just drilled out all those holes. I didn't show you that because it's super boring, but I drill my holes. Some people push them through with an awl, some people punch them. I like to drill them because it removes a small amount of material, so it lets the stitch and the two needles and the knots get through there a little easier, and you don't see anything, of course, once it's all done. So it just gives a beautiful clean look. Now, before we go ahead and die, which happens before stitching, I'm going to go ahead and find my spot for my snap, so I can die around those holes. So I'm going to have my snap right there. I like to make a little impression, as you might be able to see there. Then I'll punch my hole. This is just a sequence I do this. So this is for my top snap. Now that my hole's punched, I have that steel ring sticking through the underside of the leather. So now I'll put my axe back in, put that snap through there, and then I'll draw it super tight, and I'll create that impression again with the steel ring snap. So now I have the impression on this side too, and I can go ahead and punch there. So there, our holes are punched for the snaps. That's the very last step. Now we'll go ahead and dye that leather, and then we can run our stitching. This part comes a really close second to the stitching groover, I tell you. There's nothing like seeing some intense Phoebing's dye go on to some just natural finish leather like this. Here we go. We're using light brown. Got a new bottle of light brown come in. I've just been loving the color on this natural leather. It's so beautiful. See, it goes on pretty uneven at first. Get our edges there. Once you go over it the second time, so I'll do strips like this to the first coat, and then the second coat I will do swirls, so you get rid of all those lines. Wetting the leather like this also tightens up a lot of those holes that we drilled, because the leather softens a little bit, becomes a little bit malleable, and when it dries it hardens up and tenses up.
Speed is a phrase. They all have used the phrase goodbye. haven't they? So I named that Manhattan Henge, sort of hearkening back to my early days, thinking about the alignment of the sun and structures that we might build. So twice a year, for those viewers or listeners who don't know, twice a year, the Manhattan street grid, which is not perfectly aligned north-south, the Manhattan...
Okay, check out our collar here. It looks lovely, if I do say so myself. I'll leave this extra material here. I've seen some people put beads on them before. Mike can do whatever he wants with those. And then here is our sheath. It's going to be a little bit small and tight first, but it just needs some time. You want it to be a little too tight when it's first made so that it can wear in. Okay, and that's the look we have, which I think is just so eloquent. It's a lovely bushcraft look. It just has that classic ruggedness. I like the color, I like the stitching, the pins. It's a great design. Like I said, you play on having that big beard and the straight edge, so your axe sits in just like that. And then because it's such a strong taper here, once this is closed, there's no way this little opening can come out over this massive opening here. So it's impossible for that sheath to slide off your axe. A sheath like this also means you don't have any straps that can hook up in anything, so there's no dangling straps there to hook in limbs or to pull your sheath off your axe. So that's also a nice feature as well. That is it. I hope my buddy Mike really enjoys the new leather for his axe, the new clothing. Hope it serves him well, gets lots of use out of it, and that he likes it. So thank you guys for watching. If this is your first time here, I'd invite you to subscribe to my channel. Please leave me a comment down below. Hit the like button. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.